Hi team, Mr. McCurry from Action Karate Chalfont, Sensei Michael from Action Karate Jamison, and we're here today talking about and trying to get everybody some background information about what's coming up on October 7th with the Living Debt-Free and Learning How to Accumulate Wealth Action Institute that we're going to be running. And this young man right here is going to be talking about it, so we're going to be finding lots of good stuff about him. But more importantly, we're going to find out some things today about why we're willing to give up a couple hours to spend time with this 20-something, because there's a lot of stuff here. We're going to peel at the onion, so to speak, and find out a lot about Sensei Michael. So the first thing I want you to know is I've known him since he was 5 years old. Got to watch him from Shark right on up and see him grow and how he came about things. But Sensei Michael, even at 5, was one of those people that just has this old soul. Like even at 5, he had wisdom well beyond those years. So even though he's only in his late 20s?
Sir, 28.
20, oh my goodness, 28. He really, to me, has the wisdom and maturity of someone in their 50s easily. Most people in my age, who am legitimately in my 50s, don't have a lot of 20-year-olds in their life that they look at as mentors and people that they learn from. But Sensei Michael's definitely somebody that I learn from on a regular basis and try to talk with as often as I can to help grow myself. So the chronological years to me don't mean much of anything. It's what somebody brings to the table. To give you an idea, there's one sensei in the entire Action Karate system that I'm aware of, just one. And that's this gentleman. And he received that moniker at 8 years old because he was so good at our leadership program. You wanted to do something to show that. So that's pretty much where the Sensei Michael moniker came from, and it's carried on all this time. So anyway, that's me babbling on. Let's get to know him a little bit. So tell us about Sensei Michael growing up.
So some of you guys, I started karate when I was 5, and I think for me, I was always so lucky that I had good role models in my life, right? So if you know the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. So if you guys know the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, he talks about he had 2 influences. He had his biological father, who was a great guy and shared all this wisdom, and then there was his rich dad father that was really his friend's dad that became his kind of financial mentor, right? And when he was 9, he started learning from his rich dad. And I kind of felt like when I read that book super long time ago, that kind of paralleled my story. I had my mom who's this amazing role model for me and just the best in the world, right? But, my family certainly wasn't financial savvy in any way. And I saw, my mom to this day still works 2 jobs, but I saw her, work 2 jobs, all of growing up. And she put us through Catholic school and, I had a great childhood, but it certainly wasn't a luxurious childhood. Our vacation was the Jersey Shore for 4 or 5 days. I saw my mom save every single week to afford to be able to take us, on that trip. And it was awesome, Jersey Shore is great. Right. But it certainly wasn't my friends going to Disney World or doing this or doing that. I always had that. I always kind of saw her struggle of, the typical American paycheck to paycheck and, we can't afford this or we have to wait till the next time I get paid kind of thing. And then I had these other role models in my life, through karate where I learned about saving and investing, and I talked a little about it today at our certification. So I kind of think I always had those 2 balances in my life, which I think, I'm not sure if it's a nature versus nurture thing, but kind of steered me in one direction.
Fascinating. For as close as I am to you and all the people in your life, I never made that connection, but that's absolutely 100% true. I've read that book as well, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and Mr. B and Miss Jackie kind of were that rich dad, rich mom for you,
yeah. Kind
of giving you that background, that education that so many of us don't get. So you just talked about kind of growing up in the Sensei Michael household, or the Michael St. John, the St. John household. We didn't come home and just say, I want a new video game, and mom's laying out $50 every week for a new video game. It definitely wasn't that. You grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, row home,
yeah.
Right? So there was a little bit of struggle. Cool. So I just want to paint that picture. So tell us about your education.
So I'm Archbishop Ryan. So any AR people watching, awesome. For college, I went to the University of Pennsylvania. I got my degree in political science. I knew when I was 13 that I was going to teach martial arts, but I wanted to go to school for something and kind of set the example for our students and our families. So. Yep, I went to Penn.
Graduated with a 2.0, something like that.
Not a 2.0. I think I had a pretty good college average. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Oh, you're being modest, I believe.
No, high school was really a chaotic academic accomplishment. College
okay.
got a 3 point something.
Really? I'm okay, gotcha. To me, that's still pretty impressive.
It was good.
So let's go back a few years. When did you actually start really legitimately saying, I'm saving for my future?
So I think I always kind of had the mindset, I can remember talking to my mom about like I need an allowance, and like what chores can I do to earn some extra money, and like I remember like being excited, $5 a week to like a 7-year-old, it was all the money in the world, right? But I remember like wanting that. Probably my most like vivid first memory, or a couple of first memories. One, and I talked about it today at our certification, was like the compound interest binder. And it talked about, if you're 20 and you start saving compared to if you're 30 and start saving, or 40 and start saving, the difference, long term, right? So I kind of knew early on, like, saving early makes sense. I remember Mr. B telling me, you need to invest in a mutual fund. And I remember, like, going to the bookstore with my mom and buying mutual funds for dummies, because I didn't know what mutual funds were, but I thought, like, should get a book and read about it. So I would say
How old were you there?
12 or 13.
Gotcha.
Like, I can remember, like, learning at a really early age. And, I remember being in high school, like, investing in mutual funds. And some of my friends were like, wait, what?
When did you open your first money market account?
I would think I was 12.
12 years old.
And I can remember, like, I forget, one of my parents to drive me to, like, our local bank, and, like, going up to the teller and explaining that I want a money market account. And then, there's, like, a minimum balance you have to, like, open a money market at most banks. And she's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, like, I understand, like, I got it. And I remember, like, I went to the same bank pretty much almost through into my 20s, and like the teller and I would still talk about that conversation. Like, I remember you were that kid that wanted the money market account kind of thing.
I'm lots of smiling because I'm number one, I just love listening to him talk. But the other thing is, I'm thinking to myself, if I had those mentors in my life, I would have loved to have been. I think I'd be in a much better position. Not that I'm complaining about my life. I have a great life and a great situation. But boy, to have that educational background at such a young age. And to get started so young. So what was your first major purchase?
It would be my car. I was 16 and a half because someone in my life told me that I need to make sure I have my car the day I get my license. You can imagine who that person
I can imagine who that was.
But no, I remember, like, some of my friends certainly, had parents that bought them cars, which was super lucky. That wasn't an option for me. My mom helped where she could, but there was no, like, Mrs. St. John writing a check for a car. But I remember being super proud that, I went to the car dealership and I bought my own car. And, I had my checkbook and I wrote a check. It was a 2000 Saturn. Her name was Goldie.
I remember her.
The car was gold.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, like, being, having pride in, yeah, I bought it, And, I was paying insurance and I was paying to get, it's my car, and that's the deal.
So 16 and a half, you wrote a check for how much?
I think the car was $6,000.
$6,000. So think about a 16-year-old being able to write a check, and I'm guessing there was still money in the account?
There was, thank goodness,
there
because
was.
Like, I think, like, the first week I bought it, something, like, it wouldn't start or something crazy. Like, I got it home that week, and I remember going to school the next morning, or maybe a couple days later, whatever, and like, it actually wouldn't start. So I remember, like, having my first, like, mechanics bill, 1 week after I bought my car, and had to get some things fixed.
That's what comes with your car and your insurance, a mechanics bill.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
That's the way it works. But the good news is that you watch, you've got to have a reserve, which is, I'm sure, something we're going to talk about on October 7th at the event, right? We'll be talking about all those things. So just some fun facts that in preparation for talking to Sensei here, here's what I found when I did some research. 33% of people have nothing saved for retirement. 23% have less than $10,000 saved for retirement, which means, and we all know that $10,000 is not even close to what you need. So 56% of people don't have anything saved at all. Here's the other thing that I found really interesting. A recent study, people in their 40s, over 80% of them will live to be in their 80s. So if 56% of them don't have anything saved, what's going to happen?
And I think, just not to interrupt, but something I read about that, I think if you're married and you make it over 50, like both of you, one will live till 92. Like it goes
that was
up,
part of what I read.
Yeah, it goes
Absolutely.
up even higher. It's crazy. Yeah.
So what's stopping everybody?
So I think there's a certain stigma, right? We kind of talked about it a little bit this morning that, you're told not to talk about, politics, religion, and money, right? And it was interesting, so I knew we were going to talk today. The whole stigma came actually from, like, the British in the 1700s. And it was, like, taboo if you were wealthy to talk about your wealth because it was so much more visual wealth, right? Like, you knew you were wealthy because you had a giant mansion, so why would you talk about it? Or, you had all these servants, or, you had all these cats. Like, you didn't have to bring it up. Right. So if you did, it was taboo. And I think there's kind of part of our culture where, it's still part of it. Is it, who used to write the, like, advice columns, like Emily Post?
Dear Abby?
Yeah, maybe one of them.
Right.
But talked about, like, money is, like, the third tier thing you can talk about, like below sex and religion. So you talk about that first before you bring up money and at dinner kind of thing. So I think that's part of it. And I think there's also a stigma, like, as you get older, you should know more, so you don't ask when you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm in my 50s, I have 2 kids, I should know what I'm doing, so you feel funny about getting help about it. And you don't learn it in school. There's no I went to one of the best schools in the country, and I have calculus, which is great, and I have some European history classes, super useful now. But there was never a class like how to invest, how to save for retirement,
right.
Stuff that you need.
And to add on to that, it is a whole taboo conversation. The other thing I read was a recent study showed that 52% of parents give misinformation about how to save and invest to their kids.
Yeah.
So that if you're giving that bad information, which means parents don't have that good information, and for you, and you've said it earlier, it didn't just come to you. You didn't just stumble upon it and decide to read the books. You had those mentors in your life, and you and I and a bunch of us talk about this all the time. So tell us about the value you see in mentors, not just financially, but in everything you do.
I think, listen, nobody's, no man's an island, right? And nobody's good at everything. And I think, the culture of action karate has always been Kanai, right? Constant and never-ending improvement. And, we have almost 50 people here today, learning how to become better teachers and, better instructors, right? So I think we're just lucky that we kind of have that culture. But it's true, you invest how many $1,000s a year and learning how to be a better business owner and instructor. And, I do the same thing. Mr. B, Miss Jackie do the same thing. And, I have a business group I go to. I have a financial group I go to. Because you need to learn from other people. I'm certainly not the expert at any of this. I've just been lucky enough to study it and learn from those experts. And I think I'm able to share it.
Yeah, it's so important to surround yourself with good people and just constantly keep getting yourself educated.
And we've talked about this before, I think, with Lessons of the Week. Your success is the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And whether you measure it financially, professionally, however you want to measure success, you're the average of those 5 people, right? It's what we all learn, birds of a feather flock together kind of thing. So if you want to be better, you need to be around better people, whatever you're trying to improve.
So you're going to talk about 12 reasons why people don't accumulate wealth. Can you give us a taste of that?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is people don't define what wealth really is, right? And, they have either they don't have a number at all, or they have some abstract number. But you think about it. If you could take care of your housing, take care of your food, take care of your, cars and, your basic utilities, you'd be pretty good. You know what I mean? That extra stuff is extra, and that number for a lot of people is 40 or 50 grand a year. It's not this outrageous, I need $30 million by the time I retire. You need to figure out how to generate $40,000 a year. And for some people it's 100,000, some people it's 200,000, depending on your lifestyle. But it's a small number. It's not totally out of the realm of possibility.
Right.
So I think that's first. They don't define, hey, this is my number, this is where I need to get to, right? Because they don't know. I think number 2, they might define it, but then it changes. Once, it ends with anything, right? It doesn't mean you don't strive for your goals, but you kind of have to know when you get there. And I think lastly, sometimes it just seems so big, you don't even start. And that's the one piece of advice, if you can't come on October 7th, but you're listening now, start with something. That my favorite thing that I bother Madeline with is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's my favorite quote. She loves it. But it's so true, right? If you're, this big thing, start with something. If it's $10, a paycheck that you're saving, better than $0. Do something with it. So anyway, for me, I think that's it. I think sometimes it's just so big, they don't kind of know what they're aiming at, and they just don't know where to start.
I'm sure she loved that quote the first 12 times you said it.
Yes, this first 12 times I said it yesterday.
She's now probably pretty sick of it.
Can I tell you just a total random story? So literally, if you could meet my wife Madeline, I do some version of the elephant thing maybe 12 times a day. But I was in the drive-thru at Dunkin' Donuts getting my coffee, and I drink coffee black now, because I'm trying to not do the whole dairy thing. And the drive-thru guy said, yo, how do you drink your coffee black? And my answer, of course, was 1 sip at a time. And he thought it was hysterical.
Of course.
Madeline did not think it was as funny, but I had a good time with it.
The humor is lost on her, no doubt about it. What mistakes have you made along the way?
So I read a book. I forget who the author was, but one of the things they talked about is you should always invest in what you know. And that's just invest in things you understand. And Warren Buffett, probably the most prolific investor of all time, talks about that too. If he doesn't understand it, he's not investing in it. So I think my best investments have always been things I understood. I think my worst investments are either A, I don't understand, or what all people make a mistake with is investing in individual stocks. Mm-hmm. Because you buy at the wrong time, you sell at the wrong time, you don't really understand the company. My favorite story I shared with you a little bit was I was probably 18. I was going out to dinner with my in-laws. It was a Saturday night. And it was right around, I was definitely 18, so it was right around 2000, 2008, the financial crisis. And I get a call from a friend of mine who says, Michael, you have to, listen, do what you want, but I just bought a bunch of stock in Merrill Lynch and Countrywide, and you should too. It's super low. Countrywide and Merrill Lynch are never going away. I mean, they're institutions. It's just crazy. Like, once this all rebounds, it's going to be amazing. It's the lowest it's ever been, and on and on and on and on. So, of course, I'm like, yeah, sounds great. So I remember, so we went out to dinner that night with my in-laws. I told my father-in-law, who is a kind of another good role model for me, who kind of studies finances and kind of is in this world too. And I told him about it, and he's like, I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea. Like, a lot of heavy reading, like, doesn't really make sense. But I guess, yeah, whatever, do what you want. So, of course, I bought some Countrywide stock. If you don't know the whole 2007, 2008 story, Countrywide no longer exists. Eventually got bought up by Bank of America.
What was left of it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think it was like a 90% loss, whatever I invested. So, A, not very good. Had a super good return. But I think the important thing for me was it wasn't money that was like a deal breaker for me in any way. I was certainly not happy about it, and it wasn't like, oh, who cares kind of thing. But, everything else was taken care of. I wasn't, taking money out of my, college savings or my retirement account or my emergency. You know what I mean? It was just like...
discretionary income.
Yeah, one of the things I like to do is invest like that, and, I'm not very good at it, apparently, so...
No, because the Countrywide.
But so anyway, so I think for me that's a mistake, but I think most Americans make that mistake of investing in just like, a stock when there's so many better alternatives and so many smarter ways to do it. And, so there's 2% of the population that can ever beat the stock market,
right.
And chances are you're not that 2%. It's like I'm definitely not that 2%. So there's so many better vehicles than, hey, I'm going to buy Coca-Cola or Countrywide or whatever.
So we're not talking stocks. You're not going to make recommendations. That's not what the seventh is about. The seventh is about the fundamentals.
Yeah, it's really the fundamentals. And right, listen, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not going to tell you to go, invest all of your money in Apple. However, there are certainly kind of good resources and good things that you can invest in. So one of the things we'll talk about is, index funds, which super low cost. They kind of just follow the stock market. Historically, if you look at stock market averages, it's 7% every year. Some years, obviously, it's super high. Some years, it's super low. But if you look at the average over the long term, typically it's about 7%. Mm-hmm. Yeah, unless you're Warren Buffett, you're not beating that. Like, right. You know what I mean? Like, and there's good ways to kind of get that return for yourself without being Warren Buffett, and that's some of the stuff we'll share.
Yep. Okay. So, two things. If you could only say two things, what do you think those two things would be to help people?
You told me three things.
All right, I didn't want to put you on the spot, so three things. Go ahead.
Well, maybe I only have two now. I don't know.
Two or three things.
Okay. A couple of things that. What was the question? Like if I had to share something.
If you could communicate only three things about wealth accumulation, what would they be?
Yeah, I think number one of the obvious is do something. Sometimes inaction is worse than, the wrong action, right? So, not making a decision is worse than, the wrong decision. So do something. And I think a lot of times, as you get older, you always wish you did it younger, right? I might have really started when I was 16 or 17. Yeah, I wish when I was 10. That would have been better. You know what I mean? If you're in your 50s right now, yeah, obviously your 40s would be better, but you still have lots of time left. So do something. And, if you're not going to learn from us on October 7th, find someone to learn from. There's great books out there. There's great resources. There's great class. Find what resonates with you. But, take a step and do it. And you can't just kind of keep putting it off and, hope for the best kind of thing. So I think that'd be number one. Number two, I think just for 99% of us aren't good with credit cards and don't know how to use them the right way. So I think for a lot of people, just not having a credit card is a good thing. However, for your business or you want some airline points or whatever, that credit card has to get paid off at the end of the month. And credit cards have all these reward points because they know you're not going to pay it off. And they make lots of money every month on that 24% interest because they're smarter than us. They know what you're going to do. So if you're going to have a credit card, it has to get paid off. And no matter how many points you get, it's never going to make up for 24% interest that compounds on the regular. It's crazy. So do something, you need to be debt free. So you need to pay off those credit cards. And I think number three, kind of goes with do something, is really understanding the power of compound interest, because that really is your best friend in investing. There's a really cool, you'll appreciate the golf analogy, and we should do this next time we golf. This will be awesome, and you're better than me, so you'll win anyway.
Right, okay.
So imagine this, so we're on the first hole, and we decide that we're going to bet 10 cents a hole. So every hole, it's worth 10 cents. And then right before you tee off, Mr. McCreary, we decide, you know what? We're going to double it every hole. Okay. So now the first hole is 10 cents, second hole is 20 cents, third hole is 40, and so on and so forth. So if you kind of go through the numbers real fast, right? So you have 10, 20, 40, what do we have? 80 cents on hole number 4, $1.60 number 5,
320.
320 on number 6.
640.
Yeah, and you can see it kind of starts slow.
Yep.
When you get to hole 16 I think is worth about 13.6, 3, maybe $3,000. Hole number 17 is going to be worth about $6,000. And by the time you get to hole 18, it's worth about $13,000. So you lose hole 18, you're in trouble kind of thing.
Right.
And that's exactly compound interest. It starts really slow in the beginning. It doesn't seem like anything's happening, but those last couple of years, all the money is there, right? All the return is there. But the problem is, if you skip 3 holes, so let's say we're going to start this game on hole number 4 instead of 1, the highest you're ever getting is that 3,000. You're never going to get to the 18.
Right.
And it kind of goes back to you have to do something, and the earlier you start, of course, the better. But starting now is certainly better than starting 12 months from now or 12 years from now or whatever.
So I think the other thing that tends to intimidate people is it just seems so daunting and overwhelming. Investing, they make it seem so hard. And in looking over the notes of what you're going to talk about on the 7th, I don't feel that at all. I really feel like you've got this really simplistic system that people can walk out there on one sheet of paper and be able to figure out how to have a plan, not how to do it perfectly, but how to have a plan, which is really, what you said, inaction, no action sometimes is worse. So we want to make sure we do that. So I wanted to share my favorite Sensei Michael story. And once again, for me, it's all about trying to get people to appreciate that sometimes we look at our youth and think that we can't learn from them. And boy, you're really mistaken when it comes to Sensei Michael. There's so much to be learned from him. So here's one of my favorite stories to reinforce that about you, which I didn't tell you about. And Mr. B and Miss Jackie shared it with me. Years ago, you were in what elementary school?
Christ the King.
Christ the King. And Mr. B and Miss Jackie just happened to stop there and introduce themselves to the principal. They wanted to do a school program. And as they're talking to the principal says something along the lines of, well, wait, we have a karate expert here first. Let me call this person down and see if they agree with what you're saying. And Mr. B and Miss Jackie are sitting waiting in the principal's office, and elementary school Sensei Michael walks into the office to vouch for them so that they could do a program there, which I just love that story. So it's not, the reason for me sharing it is, it's not just action karate that's enamored. Everywhere he goes, he manages to connect and touch people because, as we kind of talked about at the beginning, he's just got this old soul, and he's just all about kind of accumulating knowledge, and he's gotten so much about investing that he wants to share. I hate to be the only one that I hate to be the only one that gets to enjoy it on the golf course with him and Mr. B. So we're going to put it out there for everybody else. Don't miss this opportunity, Action Family. Anything else you want to say in closing?
No, I think that's great, but I think you hit it on the head. It's not that complicated. There's certainly complicated parts of it.
We make it more complicated.
Yeah, and I think there's an industry around it being complicated. Lots of people make lots of money on you not understanding it, or all of us not understanding it, right? So one of my favorite things before we finish from the course that you're going to leave with is an index card of 9 things you have to do. But this author and this professor kind of came up with your index card of savings, and if it can fit on an index card, it's not that hard. You can hang that on your refrigerator and get it done.
Absolutely agreed. So, team, Saturday, October 7th, 9 to 11, Action Karate, Feasterville. Please sign up for it, get it. Let's take the intimidation out of saving for ourselves and saving for our families, and let's set ourselves all up to have that great enjoyment. Our 70s and 80s, I see so many people today around my parents. My parents were always good with their money, but I see people around them that weren't. I see people in my family, and they're just not living the lifestyle that I think they deserve to live after living a long life. I don't want that for our Action families. I certainly don't want it for myself, and I want my team to be able to enjoy those golden years as they go out. So thank you very much, team. I appreciate all your time. I hope to see you there on the 7th. Sensei Michael, Mr. McCurry signing out. Have a great day, Action Karate family and Facebook family.
Thanks, everyone.